so. So I think, well, it's got a lot of similarities to KIPP. Doing the long trek, the Pacific Coastal Trail, has pretty close similarities. So we'll hear from him. Tomorrow night is Night Owls. Every Wednesday night is. And we have Milk Crate Philly, or now Milk Crate. It's an app. Morgan Berman came out and talked about the mission. Tomorrow she's coming out, hopefully with some of her dev team, to talk through what it is, how they built it. We do demos every other Night Owl. After that, I think we have Nada Jaksic, who just started co-working here. She's going to demo our Android app, and so that's that. Let me back up to start a meetup. Next week, week after, Andrew Schwab plus, Dana Hoffer plus, again plus. Who else is on the Bitcoin?
Ryan finally, you always like to keep me off my toes. Ryan finally, Andrew's on it. Patrick may or may not be on it. Dana's on it. And I'm talking to one other guy on Twitter that may be on it. So 4 or 5 people.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you don't know what a Bitcoin is, you should come.
Oh, also Mark Thompson. He's a big. I didn't even know this until recently. He's a huge Bitcoin freak. So hopefully he'll be on the panel too.
Cool. Quick thank you to our sponsors, the Chester County Economic Development Council, Igniter TV, aka Sean Dominski, live streaming guy. You're all mic'd up. We're live streaming. If you're out there and you want to ask a question, tweet to Ben. Usually there's one person out there. We do that mostly with the whole recording on YouTube. Oh, I wanted to meerkat this thing. Maybe I will. Anybody know what meerkat is?
Yeah.
So I'm going to try that in a minute. Maybe we'll put Sean Levinsky out of work. But he works for free.
He's got 2 kids.
The Goshen Group, Hanky Group, Fox Rothschild, Brennan's Office Interiors, and Jaron for taking pictures, Mike for taking video, second video. If you see any of it in your social stream, share it. That will help raise awareness of this innovator and some innovators in the space and the whole program. And Jesse, I'll hit you up for Indie Film Night update.
Next Thursday, very exciting, come out. 7 to 8 is our meet and greet, 8 p.m. We are screening the final projects from my advanced video production class at Westchester University. So they've had lots of leeway to come up with something awesome was their primary charge in teams. So there will be 5 screening their final projects here. Indie Film Night is a free event. We have Boxcar as our official beer sponsor. A piece of pizza, right, is going to have some pizza here. It's free to come out. We will have, one of the votes will be for an audience award. So that's basically a popularity contest. So come out and don't vote for quality, just vote for who you like, because it's about that. But we are also doing a legitimate panel of judges as well, who will vote on award for technical merit. Something's Right Production is going to be sponsoring it, so we have a legitimate red carpet out front. We have and also a step and repeat for photo opportunities for you, your friends, and your family. So come out. That is next Thursday. 7 to 8, you can hang out and meet people. It's a great opportunity to network. And then 8 p.m. we will screen them. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Exciting.
And there's been no arrests and no
Not yet, but we got
outbreaks.
a whole class of college students coming out, so I'm hoping.
Yeah, we're trying to get a sponsor. If you know anybody who's wealthy and wants to be associated with cutting edge creative art.
Independent film, which is incredibly cool. I mean, that ups your cool factor by the way.
The Shama guy, we're trying to stalk him on
And
Twitter.
Mike Shyamalan, yeah, we want to have him be a sponsor of Wednesday Studios.
Cool.
Yeah, if you know anyone, talk to me afterwards.
And QVC, we might hit us. I wanted to also say that one of the startups in our incubator, Mongo Sleuth, is now going to be presenting at Forum Philly, which is a big technology conference on April 14th. So we're super excited about that. We're one of 8, and this year I think it shifts its focus, and this year is cloud technology. So we're pretty. That's our niche. Also, just signed an agreement with Unisys to do a prototyping competition here, starting in the middle or the end of April. Hopefully we get the press release out this week, but that's our first big corporate partnership, so we're excited about that. And we'll want participants. That competition will have a prize, like a couple of $1,000, so it'll happen during Night Owls. So we're excited about that. All right, so let me get out of the way. We're gonna listen to Jason. Come on up. Let's give him a round of applause again.
Yeah, Jason.
Presentation, Q&A, and thank you for coming.
All right. Hi, guys. My name's Jason. I live in West Philly now. Went to Drexel, graduated in June. Started back in, I would say, February, a company called Spore Chargers with a few friends from Drexel. The premise of the idea was pretty simple. It came along with the problem that I had, kind of twofold. One was everyday working me and living me needing to charge my phone and kind of wanting a power source that I knew something about. And then also more of a hacking side of me, which wanted to learn, wanted to play around with things, wanted to break things apart, only to find that there really weren't any power sources that allowed me to do that, so I decided to make my own. So that's kind of the generation of Spore, which I'll get to in a little bit, but a little bit more background on myself. I did a 5-year program at Drexel, studied finance and entrepreneurship. I originally came in as an engineer, but I kind of saw my class schedule and was like, no, thank you. So what that allowed me to do was kind of explore other things, primarily venture capital. I worked in finance for my first 2 co-ops, and that was nice. Kind of learned the system, learned what money is and stuff like that. Wasn't for me. I kind of wanted to get more hands-on, wanted to make stuff, and so kind of around the same time, this is maybe around 2011, 2012, I was really introduced to 3D printing, just a technology that truly blew me away when I really thought about the implications of it. And I'm sitting next to guys who are supposed to be the best investors in the world, and I'm saying, hey, have you ever heard about 3D printing? And they're saying no. So I started to think about that. And while I was working there, I was kind of trading these 3D printing stocks, and I realized that it's more about the lower end of the market in this technology, or really any innovative technology. It's what people are doing with it on the ground level that you don't necessarily see, not the publicly traded companies. So I started realizing that the people that are doing that are in no different of a position than I was at that time, right? I was broke. I had enough money to buy 1 printer, so I kind of just did that. I've been a member of NextFab Studio. I'm not sure if any of you guys have gotten down to see that. It was life-changing for me because that was kind of the facility that when I was working at BlackRock, I would come home and just make for 2 or 3 hours until they kicked me out of the place. And I had no idea what I was doing. I just really liked getting my hands dirty and playing around saws and whatever. Anyway, I fell in love with 3D printing and decided to make a run for it. So my 3rd co-op, I ended up kind of doing for myself. I worked with essentially like an inventor. I don't know what he would call himself really, but a mentor of mine who worked at NextFab. He kind of taught me a lot about prototyping and also organization and how to speak engineer in that sense. He also had a few other interns, so I had a couple of them help me out with the product design and a few other things, and we essentially just ramped up to build a Kickstarter. So this is after we had done, I'm sorry, I'll reverse a little bit. This was after we had done a project through Drexel. I was using this project for classes and stuff just because it was more applicable. It was something that I wanted to work on rather than just invent an idea for an entrepreneurship class and then write a business plan on it. It wasn't necessarily as fun as really coming up with a business and then trying to come up with a business plan. So we did that, and then it ended up being, it looked good enough that we decided to enter it into the incubator competition at Drexel. Drexel has an incubator that they have a competition every year for $10,000, or I guess last year was like $30,000, which just my luck. But so yeah, we ended up winning that. We got $10,000, space, office space and stuff, and that kind of got us really kicking. That enabled us to build the prototypes needed to get to the Kickstarter. So fast forward to the spring of 2013. Yeah, we just launched it. It took us a couple weeks to prepare for it. It took a long time to get the prototypes in order to show people. Essentially, we just tossed it out and said, hey, this is what we're doing. Would you buy into this, right? It was less about the product, and I'll explain the product. It was less about the product, I feel, as it was about how we were doing it and why we were doing it, as much the what, right? If you wanted a what of, I'm not sure, maybe I'm going overboard here, but the how, what, why, I'm not sure if you guys ever seen that. It's more what, how, why, but so many of the charger companies I find, and electronics companies, or just companies, period, are very much centered on the what. So they're competing with each other on the products that they build, not necessarily how they build them. So then that's the next level, which is we build a better product than this, and we build a better product because of this. But really, in order to have a company that I think people really resonate with, you're going to need to have that why. So we developed that why in the sense that we just wanted to spread power. Like we think everyone should have access to electricity. There's no reason that we shouldn't. There's walls all around us, but why can't you take that wall with you? So that's kind of the idea. Whether that applies to here or whether that applies to the developing world, we're taking it one step at a time, but that's kind of the vision. So to explain the Kickstarter, I think I should explain the product. So the product is very simple. I've just been charging my phone up here with it, but it's a solar battery charger. So inside of this is a battery. It's just like a portable battery charger that you would carry around, plug into your wall, charge it up. It'll charge your iPhone 3.5 times. This also recharges itself with the solar panel. So if you leave that out in the windowsill, if you leave it in your car, or leave it on your, even outside on the table or whatever, it'll regenerate itself slowly. Charges multiple devices at a time. It's quick charge, meaning it's going to charge your phone as fast as it can charge. And that's pretty much it. We just wanted to keep it simple, right? No software involved in it. Just how hard could it be to make a small little product like this? Very hard. It's very hard to build a product like this, or any product for that matter, whether it's a software product or a hardware product, just seeing it through and actually starting and actually launching. So when we originally launched, we had this idea of let's make the price point low enough that we can compete with people, and people will buy the product, but high enough, obviously, that we can maintain ourselves. But where we split off is that right now, because we're using 3D printing, we have an injection molded version, which is your standard version you would see in a store potentially. It's just a mass manufacturing technique, which I'll get into, and 3D printing. So the 3D printing is kind of has different value features than the injection molding. What's good about injection molding? It's cheap. What's good about 3D printing? It's customizable. It's cool, right? So like the spore that I have in my hand right now is cherry wood on the bottom. It's mint PLA on top, and it's, I guess, fire red PLA on top. It's just funky. I made this morning. It's the same components that are inside here. I just switch out shells. So that's kind of the idea of 3D printing. More to the point, if you have a 3D printer, there's no reason that you should be buying the whole product from me. Why don't you just make it yourself? I'll send you the battery. I'll send you the circuit board. I'll send you the solar panel. And those are things that you can't 3D print. So you take as much of the making into your hands as possible, or as you want. You could buy the product all packaged up. We also sell cables. We also sell solar panels. This is kind of all building into this ecosystem of products that we think makes it easy for people to stay charged wherever they're at. So Kickstarter. Did the Kickstarter, raised over $100,000 in about 30 days. And yeah, that's what we said too. And then, so with that, that's like a lot of responsibility. You kind of, with $100,000, you think you could do a lot, but actually you would be surprised. So we ended up taking on another investment in August from a Drexel alumni, and that essentially was explicitly for just this first delivery. Let's just make this delivery as good as possible. Let's show people how a product could be built, and more to the point, let's learn how to build a product. So that's what we did. So in August, we were in China. Me and my two teammates went to China to source the product. The idea being, if you wanted to make a software product, and I'm sure a lot of people here are, it's probably going to be you sitting down and coding a large majority of it, right? Because you can do that. It's the people who are going to be able to do that above you. If you're going to pay them, does it make sense to pay them, or does it make sense to do it yourself? Oftentimes, it makes sense to just do it yourself until you can prove it and get that kind of minimum viable product up and running. For a hardware product, you have that same choice. Do you do it yourself, or do you hire someone to do it? And that's really what most people do, because building a hardware product is explicitly hard. So what you do is you work with a contract manufacturer. You tell them, all right, this is kind of what we want. They go to China. Well, they're already in China. They build it for you. They send you samples. You say, all right, these samples are good, or the samples are crap. Then you kind of work with them over the next couple months to do that. That's the traditional manufacturing route. We did not do that for a couple of reasons. One, maybe I'm just speaking for what we've done so far, but I don't think we would learn nearly as much if we would have done that. If we would have just put that making in someone else's hands. So we wanted to understand what goes into building a product so that we can speak about it, so we know where our product comes from. So what we did was we broke out the product into its basic components. So you have a shell. It's really quite simple. You have a shell, you have a battery, you have a circuit board, and a solar panel. And you just put them together. And because 3D printing is such a versatile and adaptable technology, this shell really can look like anything. So now you just put the shell right back on there. Oop. It's a demo version, but there we go. So that's pretty much it. Now, I think when you asked me the questions kind of leading into this conversation, what I was going to talk about, the first part is just making, in general making. And I don't want to make it hardware focused, but that's what I'm focused on, that's what I'm passionate about, so that's what I'll speak about. When it comes to hardware, there's a certain amount of self-confidence that you need to just make anything. And exposing yourself to the tools and to the people that help you make those things is critically important as early as you possibly can. Because the tools that are available to someone in China, for example, a factory, are the same tools that are available to you. I've been to China and I've been to the factories, and they're no different necessarily than, say, NextFab, except for scale, and except for sheer number of people, working, or sheer number of machines pumping out widgets. You could do that here, and you could prove a market here, or you could make a product better here. But it helps to just know that, and it helps to know that you can do that. So that's kind of that empowerment aspect of making, which I think is a very empowering thing innately. So that gets into the next round. So once you have an idea for something and you have the general ability to make it, how do you go about showing people what that is? Well, you build, just like in software, you build an MVP, you build a minimum viable product. For us, what did that look like? That was just a completely non-functional 3D printed spore. I would hand it to people and say, hey, this is the size of it. This is, if I told you it could charge your phone this fast, how much would you pay for that? Or how does this feel in your hand? How does this feel in your pocket? So there's a lot of prototyping that was heavily guided by 3D printing to just get the shape and the feel of this thing right before we actually launched it. Because if we were to just have this all in-house and then were to launch it, that would have been a very risky idea, I suppose. And then there's this huge gap, and this is really the gap that I'm in right now, to be quite honest with you guys. It's the gap between prototype and maybe small production to mass production. So it's one thing to build one thing. It's one thing to build 1 to 10 things. It's a totally different thing to build 2,500 things. Totally different thing to build 50,000 things. But it's actually easier to build 50,000 things than it is to build 2,500 things. And why is that? Because especially the way that we're doing it ourselves. So we're having to go and find all these individual components, bring them together, and we're doing the assembly here in Philadelphia. So that whole process, no one taught us how to do that. We're learning how to do that as it comes. We're learning how to do that with the components that we've sourced. So normally it would just be easier to just have a contract manufacturer somewhere in China or Asia and say, all right, we want 50,000. The difference in 50,000 to 2,500 is just a price. It's just a volume break now. It's no harder for you to build 2,500 or 50,000 or 250,000 as it is to build, one. But then getting to that stage where you can talk to a contract manufacturer and the capital that it's going to take to actually be taken seriously by them is significant. So unless you're really building, upwards of 10,000 things, a contract manufacturer isn't. Again, there's exceptions to this rule, but they're not really going to take you seriously because your volumes just aren't there. And really, as a startup, you don't know what your volumes are. So unless you have 10,000 people that want your product right now, in that sense, you have good problems, but there's no, most of the time it's this weird in-between piece where you kind of have the option to make it yourself or way over to pay to have someone else make it for you. So we opted for the first route. So that's the process that we're in right now, is just getting everything together. So right now my house is filling up with boxes, it's filling up with inserts, it's filling up with adapters, it's filling up with cables, 3D printers, solar panels, all these things are just coming to my house. And that's a very real thing when you talk about hardware. Whereas it might not be with software as you try and scale up. So just kind of a word of warning, if you guys wanted to scale up with any kind of hardware, just make sure you have a nice garage or a nice basement or something. So we're lucky to have that actually in Philly. Because if I were to do this in my apartment, I would just be, it would be tough. To that point, and maybe I'm shooting off topic before I come back, which is the team. if you're trying to build a hardware product by yourself, I really hope, I hope the best for you, but I really hope that you're an engineer to some degree, a product designer to some degree, and a business person to some degree, because you're going to need all three of those people to really execute the building of a product. Personally, I was more business. I was really interested in making, and I wanted to know how things worked, but I didn't know how to, I couldn't put in a design for my circuit board and say, all right, make this. I had to find an engineer to do that. Where did I find my engineer? Well, funny enough, Drexel is a great engineering program, and I've worked with a lot of engineers at Drexel, but I ended up finding my engineer on Reddit, online. I just said, hey, I'm looking for a CTO to help me with this startup, and I was disappointed because at first no one really responded to the message, and then I checked my messages like about a week later, and I had like 10 private messages from like all over the world. People were like, oh, I'm really excited to do this. So ended up talking with people, found my CTO named Adrian, just because he was right out of college just like us, and he was like, look, like what you're trying to build, it's not that hard. It's quite simple. Like if you were asking me to put software into it, I would tell you flat out no. But because of what you're asking is very simple, it's actually purposefully simple, I think we can do this. So worked over the next couple months to get it to where it's at, and as of today, we're 1 week away from getting our first panel. So our first panel meaning the circuit board that you're going to be building 2,500 of. First you build one of them just to make sure it works, and then you build 10 of them on a panel, because that's how the machines work, right? You have a big machine, it's called a pick and place machine. They have them at NextFab if you're interested in seeing it. Basically it just picks up components, puts it on a circuit board, and then you send that whole thing through an oven and it bakes it. That's how they do it in China, that's how they're going to do it in Japan, that's how they do it everywhere. So that's all products are made like that, or all circuit board products are made like that. So we're at the point now where we're very, very close to actually popping on our circuit board. So that's just to tell you, like with almost 300 grand in cash, it's taken us, 8 months to get that? I mean, I would never have thought it was going to take that long for such a small product, but it does, and that's the reality of kind of pushing something forward like this and trying to keep your team together for that, right? The next thing I was going to talk about, well, I mean, I could talk more about manufacturing, but I would rather just save that for the Q&A if anyone has like more direct questions for manufacturing or doing business overseas or sourcing product or anything like that. The next thing I was going to talk about was distributed manufacturing, and not even just distributed manufacturing. I think it was more just distributed technologies and disruptive technologies. What do I mean by that? There's distributed manufacturing technologies, and then there's distributed, you could call them collaboration technologies, funding technologies, whatever they are, that's what they are. So Kickstarter would be a distributed funding, platform. That's what it is. It's people all over the world who have a little bit of money, and they put it in for this one project that adds up to me, on a plane to China. So that's kind of the power of that, right? I can directly attest to just the power of the crowd wanting to see something happen, and then it starting to happen. So that would be distributed technology. Another thing, a lot of this is crowdsourced, right? This product is crowdsourced. Our logo is crowdsourced. A lot of our marketing materials were crowdsourced. Some of our earlier websites were crowdsourced. So, and honestly, a lot of our engineering has been crowdsourced. It's been contractors. I have one engineer on board, so what I do is I use websites like Elance, Guru.com, Odesk.com to find contractors really quickly to do quick things. So like relay out my circuit board, or give me a rendering of my injection molded shell, or give me some quotes for this or that. It's like you need to be able to because you need to leverage those other people. So instead of trying to find that perfect sourcing agent, why don't you just hire somebody for $200 to do that stuff for you and not have to form a long-term relationship with them? And that's what they want, because they've done enough projects now that they can turn that around for you really quickly. So if in the effort of building anything nowadays, I think you would be naive to overlook crowdsourced technologies and crowdsourced platforms, although I think some people are wary of them. And then also what we're doing on the actual product, there's crowdsourced all over the place. So what we do with our shells, we design these in-house, but we're releasing them for free. Why would I do that? Why not? It's like if you have a 3D printer, I would never stop you from 3D printing my thing. Why? Because it's only 1/4 of my product. You still can't 3D print a circuit board, you can't 3D print a solar panel or a battery. So if you get them from me and I give you my design for free, it's pretty likely that you're going to 3D print it and build it yourself. So that's a customer that I wouldn't have normally got, who maybe would have just hacked it together themselves. So that ties back into this whole maker movement, which is really taking that first part that I talked about of empowering yourself through the ability to make. I mean, I'm not sure if you guys see that around you, but it's quite incredible, this whole movement that's happening, and people are just saying, yeah, we can make that, and then it happens, right? But for websites like that, would be like Thingiverse, Umagine. These are websites where they have these designs up for free. You can just go download them. So if you have a 3D printer, that's how I print for the most part. If I just want to print a cup, I wouldn't design a cup and then print it. I would just download a cup that somebody had already designed and print it, because it's all free. That's kind of the ethos of this movement. Our circuit board, for example. Our circuit board, we utilize a company called Upferter. Upferter is kind of like, how would I describe them? Almost like the Google Doc of circuit design. So what does that mean? I can put my circuit design up for free. Why would I do that? It's taken me a long time and a lot of money to design this thing. Anyone could reverse engineer it. Anyone could design their own. So why wouldn't I just put the platform out there for people to build off of that? So now you're building off of my infrastructure and our infrastructure that we build together. So I say, all right, this thing is going to cost potentially $50. Well, someone in Uganda can't pay $50. Someone in India is not going to pay $50. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is to redesign the board. Do I have the bandwidth to redesign the board right now? No. But if I throw my project up online, who knows? Somebody in India might change it for them and say, all right, we can remove all these components because we don't need them, and that makes the board 80% cheaper. You know, and so that's how you start collaboratively designing things in this new, you know, I guess you would call it like the internet commons, right? Of just people being able to see what people are doing and then being able to help them with it. You know, look at things like Wikipedia, right? Like, why does that even exist? Because people just make it happen. You know, that's the only reason it happens. Now, the third thing I was going to talk about, I'm trying to run back through my head. Yeah, all right, yeah, that's perfect. So I think what I said in that is just entrepreneurship is a huge, and I noticed this through being in Philadelphia right now. It's hugely popular, wildly popular to call yourself an entrepreneur nowadays, and I don't mind anyone doing that at all. You know, as long as you're doing that with your best intention. And I think a lot of people nowadays, I see this on college campuses, they want to be an entrepreneur because they don't want to be labeled as anything else, and that's fine. But what I would implore you to think about is that why? Why are you doing what you're doing? Is it just because you want autonomy, or is it because you want to make an impact? And that was kind of, to this point, was I didn't just want to do this for autonomy, although I certainly wanted autonomy. I don't want to sit at a cubicle anymore. I don't want to work at a desk. I don't want anybody necessarily telling me what to do. But if you were to get into entrepreneurship for that, you would probably be sorely disappointed, because there's just different people telling you what to do. So instead of a boss, it's an investor, or instead of a coworker, it's an employee or a partner or a founder. You know, it's the same thing, but just different weights that you're putting on yourself. But also, you know, I think the world, in my opinion, when I looked at this project, I said, I think the world has enough, and I'm sorry if anyone's doing this, but like dating apps, for example. I wanted to build a real product. You know, I wanted to feel something. I wanted to get this into people's hands because I knew that they needed it. I needed it. And that's the first and foremost, you know, tenet of, I think, entrepreneurship is, do you need it? And if you need it, then at least you'll have one customer, right? Isn't that the truth? Like, but ultimately, you'll find more people just like yourself that also need it. But if you're just building something for money because you see a market, I would ask you to reconsider, you know, what you're doing, or just really reframe how you're doing it or why you're doing it. And that's kind of the idea of what I would call impact entrepreneurship. I've been listening a lot to talks, and I've been going to conferences about impact investing. It's a big buzzword right now. It's actually only like a couple years old, the word, and it's really uncertain. People don't really know what that means, right? The general idea is impact investors, they want that financial return just like a VC or an angel investor would, but they also want a social return on their investment, whatever that be. You know, X amount of sexual assaults prevented, or X number of people brought out of abject poverty, or X number of people, you know, given electricity for the first time, or something like that. They have these parameters to define that. And I think people need to define that for themselves as an entrepreneur. Like, what's that impact that you're trying to make, with whatever you're trying to do, whether it be a solar battery charger or a dating app. It comes down to the, like, why, and that's where the impact really comes from. Yeah, so I guess catch you up to right now. We're in West Philly. We're just gearing up for production. We're kind of learning the ins and outs of what that means as far as, like, what does 2,000 boxes look like? Or what does 25 or 3,000 batteries look like? 3,000 adapters. What does that all look like? So just putting that all in one place and visualizing that and seeing, wow, this is going to be, in a couple months, this is going to be all over the world. So shooting that all over the world. So we're just trying to put as much love and as much positivity into the product itself so that when people get it, they say, okay, this wasn't just something that they contracted out to make. You could tell that their fingerprints are on every single piece of it. And I think that's more the products that I want to build. Those are the products that I want to buy. Those are the products that I want to help people build, is the products that they're building, not that they just want to see built and that they contract out. I'm not saying that contracting isn't an effective strategy. I'm just saying put some of yourself into whatever you're building. So I guess we can open up for questions. I mean, I'm not sure how long I went on time there, but I like Q&A more.
I feel like you're the first business that seems to be built like in an entirely different fish tank or planet. Like, it's just separate from the way business has been built. So it's intriguing. So Q&A, we'll do house rules, name, who you are, your question, and who is first.
Kyle Hudson, 2300 Digital. You may not want to answer this, but how much does it cost to make one of those?
I'm still finding out. That's what I would say. I'd say it's gonna cost closer to the price that we're selling them at, which was $50 on Kickstarter. And then I think we previously met. Let's just say that. So I think we'll break even on the delivery. Yeah. Do I think we're gonna make a killing? No, of course not. The idea is to follow that up with another round of products. So again, at the volumes that we've been working at, very tricky volumes. It's hard to pick. I wish I could give you like an exact number, but we really don't have one.
How many have you made?
To this point, again, like circuit boards, we haven't built any. Actually, now we built, I guess, 8 circuit boards. So putting that all together, maybe 8, something like that. Total, probably 15. But that's through revision 1, which was just completely horrible, to what it is now, which might just be like 1 resistor change from the final board. So now it's going to be, I'd say within the next 2 weeks, we'll be making 2,500 of them.
So that's the only one?
No, I got a couple more. But
Can we do a little show and tell?
absolutely,
Pass that around?
absolutely. Well, that's what I was about to say. Is this version right here is more of like a show display. So even if you want to pop it open and kind of see what's inside, feel free. But understand it will pop open.
Great. Okay. So I just wanted to point out NextFab. So it was kind of born out of your NextFab experience.
Yeah, very much so. I think NextFab, and I've said this before, totally changed my life. Just the ability to experience tools like you would never get to experience before. So you could play around on a $250,000 water jet cutter. You could play around with $50,000 3D printers that no one's ever really seen before. So when I originally went into NextFab, I was interested in 3D printing. I just wanted to see a 3D printer because I'd never seen one before. And I was so excited about this technology, but in reality I'd never experienced it. And as soon as I experienced it, and then I saw the rest of the facility, it was like, sign me up immediately.
Mike and I and Mary Ann from the Chester County Economic Development Council, and Ben and Mary Fuchs, we took a field trip to NextFab because we were trying to work on a partnership, and I had heard of it, and when I walked in there, I was like, my mind was blown. There must be $25 million worth of intense equipment, some of it is half the size of this room, and it's like a mashup of wood shop, metal shop, 3D printing, and nanotechnology. It was mind-boggling what's going on.
So just to think about having access to those tools in this day and age. 10 years ago, it was unthinkable. You had to work for Boeing, GE, or maybe go to like MIT or something like that to have some of those tools. And some of those tools have only existed for the last couple of years. So you're really on the cutting edge when you walk into that place. And if they put the power in your hands to say, all right, what do you want to learn? What are you interested in? You might not be interested in a CNC machine. You may very well be, but maybe you're interested in sewing. Maybe you're interested in 3D scanning or laser cutting or something. The ability to have those tools at your access, I think that's the new age, right? It's access over ownership. You don't need to own a car anymore. You rent it essentially. You share it or Airbnb. This is all access as opposed to ownership. So NextFab is like access to tools in that sense.
So we're kind of at the very end of the negotiation part, but I think we're doing something here with 3D printers with NextFab.
Cool.
Starting pretty soon. So more on that later. And
Hi, I'm Andrew Schwab. I'm a software engineer and entrepreneur.
Mm.
First of all, I love the kind of real gritty, I'm just going to go for it way you're telling your story. Very cool. My question for you is, can you give me maybe a positive and a negative of your whole experience around Kickstarter? Kind of anything you want to say about that?
Okay. Kickstarter. So the positive would be I raised 112 grand from people I didn't know to build a product that they had never seen before, that still hasn't been built. So it's super empowering, and it really gets a product like mine, which is a hardware product, which would normally be very hard to explain to an investor. People really want this, and he would say, "I've seen that on Amazon," and you go, all right, I'm more expensive than that," and it's like you're losing a battle like that. But what Kickstarter did more so than anything was it gave us a platform to tell our whole story in a format that we wanted to tell it in. So our video is a little long, but that's fine because we told pretty much the way that we want to do it, and it resonated with people. So I think it's just that format that people are expecting to see a video, and then they expect to see the content, and just building all that was really fun. But it was also, this is the negative, it's also really, really stressful. Extremely stressful, and unless you have like an over-the-top successful Kickstarter, which ours wasn't. Ours was successful, but it wasn't over-the-top successful. I'm talking about 4, 5, 1,000% over what you expected to raise. Then you're really dealing with totally different stresses. But at our level, it was like, day 23, we're, $20,000 or $30,000 away. It's like, oh man, like this is not cool. Like going to sleep every night, kind of waking up, hoping that there's going to be, a little bit more to a bar that, you made for yourself. And so that's kind of I'd say the negative part, which is if people think that it's just, oh, let's film a video, let's put some content up and do, it's every day. You need to answer content and questions and answering feedback, and you're reaching out to press, and you're pushing people that you've met in kindergarten and stuff. It's like, check out my project. Like, it's balls to the wall for 30 days, absolutely no doubt. And then once you're done it's not over. Like, I'm still in Kickstarter, so this is my Kickstarter experience right now. In that sense, that would be back to the positive, which is if you get that funding, it allows you to do something that you truly feel passionate about. And once you get that and you feel, wow, I have the ability to just work on something that I really love, it's like, I haven't felt this kind of happiness from almost anything else I've done. So that would be another positive, I would say.
what was your target?
Our target was 100,000.
So you were sweating it.
Yeah.
Mary Alyssa, can you tell me about your assembly process? Have you figured it out?
Mhm.
When are you going to start it?
Yeah, we've already started. Basically, I think the assembly process from a 30,000 square foot kind of view. When we originally built the product, that's the way we thought about it, was that assembly process. So, all right, what's the battery we're looking at? What's the circuit board we're looking at? What's the connector for that? And the solar panel. So how much assembly are we really going to have to do? We're trying to minimize soldering, trying to get as many of our suppliers to do as much assembly on their end as possible. So like our circuit boards. Like if we had to load up each individual board ourselves, it would be insanity. So that's when you work with machines. The 3D printing is the same way. Like we just have 3D printers running all the time at our spot. There's also a lot of resources. Again, going back to the crowd, there's a lot of resources to get people to 3D print stuff with you or for you. So that's the 3D printed side. So if you look at the product, you have the main guts. you got the circuit board, you plug the battery into the circuit board, you plug the solar panel into the circuit board. Now you have essentially a working spore with no shell. Now you just get your shell, you screw your circuit board into your shell for support, and then you put the top shell on it, and that's a spore. With the injection molded version, there's going to be 4 screws on the top shell. So you're going to it'll basically get screwed in from the bottom, 4 screws, so it's going to be real secure, and then there's a band that goes over that. So that's a full spore. Then you get a box, you get inserts. I actually have our inserts and stuff over there if you guys are interested in checking out later. You put it in a box, you get labeling and stuff like that. That's the stuff that we're finding out now as far as like labeling, shipping, distribution.
How many people do you think you're going to assemble?
To do assembly?
Right.
Well, we actually have a decent team for that, but we also have a lot of people who are just like are interested in doing that, whether it be like interns or whether it's just people that have explicitly said, you know, my friends or our friends were just like, whenever you need help like assembling, let's do it. So I'd say we'll probably have on any day 5 or 6 people at our house just plugging away, and we already have nowadays we have like 3 hanging around, but again, like this is really just like gearing it up for that. Once we have actual like soldering to do, once we actually have packing to do, it's going to be a wholly different level. So check back in like a month and I'll tell you how it's going.
Quick question, if someone's interested in prototyping on a 3D printer and then going the route you're going, is one stop along the way doing 5 3D printers and doing like micro production, but mass production, but on a micro level?
Depends. It depends what you're looking for. Like for us, that is very much the case. I have in my basement right now I have 5 3D printers, and they're mine. I mean they're Spores, but we're running them full time.
Okay.
But depending on what your product is, like say you were trying to build a I don't know, something the size of a car engine. It might make sense to do one 3D print just so you have all the components tied together and you know visually what it's going to look like. And that's very important to show to manufacturers and very important to show to investors and that. But unless it's something, and this is more about the nitty-gritty of 3D printing, because I think people have an idea of what 3D printing is because they've heard it somewhere and it's, oh, build something out of nothing. But it's really not like that. It's very much a human involved process. So you need to load up the machine, you need to unload the machine, you need to clear off the flash, all the stuff that you don't want printed. So to do any kind of like small run printing, it has to be the type of product that you can. So like ours is really good size for that because it fits on any build plate. You know, I don't have to break it up into multiple pieces. But if you were to build a car engine, you could build it on a small printer, but now just break it into 100 pieces and then print 100 different pieces. So it really depends what you're looking to sell and what your price point is as well. If you're printing out things that you're looking to sell for $10, just injection mold it. There's no point 3D printing it at that point. But if you're 3D printing a little bit higher price point thing, like ours is $50, $60, $70, $80 price point, it makes more sense to do that.
Good to know.
Mike Shirk, web designer, kind of following up on that, have you kind of figured out rough numbers when you think you might switch over from like 3D printing to like mass?
We're doing them simultaneously. Actually. Yeah, so we're working with, if you're familiar with like Proto Mold, it's like the largest molding company in the world. So that's what we're doing for our injection mold. So we want to do both at the same time. So with retailers who might want our product, I probably can't afford to give them 3D printed versions because they might want 100, and the 100 is going to take me a week maybe. So we're more saving those for the 3D printed for customization, more about people that kind of want to tell a story about themselves through their product and buy into a company that's using that kind of technology, and then save the injection molded for a product that you just, hey, I just want a version that works, like guaranteed, solid, you know, that's that version. So that's the real version actually. Most of the people bought that rather than 3D printing.
Wilfred Carroll, environmental entrepreneur. Good question. When you were seeking your crowdfunding, were you concerned about intellectual property?
Yeah.
How did you handle that?
I would say, I mean, we started looking into intellectual property. I did in the early part of 2013. So I had a whole year of just research. I'd done research into patents before, but I'm talking specifically for sport. All the different aspects and facets of it. And what we found after talking to about 100 different lawyers and getting 100 different opinions, you know, all added up and calculated, there's nothing patentable on the product. Just flat out, it's a really simple idea. The thing that I didn't mention in the product overview that I should have is the products are daisy chainable. meaning if I had 10 of them, I could hook them all up together and have a power bank 10 times the size of just one. Right? It's a pretty simple electric principle, though. So a lot of people say, oh, that's patentable, and it's not. Nor would I want to patent it, and that's the other idea, right? So we looked into patenting only so much as we wanted to and needed to understand that nobody could come in and patent something that we were building. But in reality, I don't want this to be patented. I don't think it should be, and realistically, it leads into my opinion on just the whole patent system in general, which I think is outdated, antiquated, and in a lot of ways hinders real innovation from happening. And that's where I'm much more in favor of open source. So everything that we can open source, we will open source. Because then you add on the multiplier effect of people looking at your project and saying, oh, this should be this way, or oh, did you think about this? And you wouldn't get that with a patent necessarily. You would get people looking at your product and trying to find ways around it. So why even build up a wall? Why don't just let people in and let's build something together kind of thing?
I was going to ask about the daisy chain thing because our office gets insane sunlight, and I was like, why don't we build a giant one? But we don't need to build a giant one. We can just hook a bunch of them together and everyone can charge their phone. It's awesome.
Can your product be scaled to put 500 watts of solar on top of a vehicle?
500 watts?
Yeah.
So our product right now, our current product. So understand that when I think of Spore, I think of an energy company. So anything that you need energy for, ultimately I'll be able to make it. Now solar panels, I have 500 watts of solar in my basement right now. I could easily get you 10 watt panels built up to 500 watts, but they're all running at 5 volts. So all my products right now are actually rated for 5 volts, so charging mobile devices, small devices, not cars yet. Something that we're interested in, but something that you might be interested in to check out is USB PD. USB PD is the new standard of PD, or USB that I don't know if anyone's seen it. It's called the Type C. It's got a lot of press. It kind of looks like Apple's lightning connector, but it's for Android stuff, and it's capable of passing 100 watts of power. So you combine that with the solar and the battery, it kind of takes this whole project to a whole nother level. Not necessarily the 500 watt car battery yet, but we're getting there.
Next, Ben.
Hey, I'm Ben, Monstry Labs. Super fascinated with NextFab's culture and kind of the ecosystem there, and how getting a bunch of creative people with varying levels of skills and competencies can be a very innovative thing, because you can kind of harp off of each other's skills. So how has your experience specifically related to kind of like your new areas of expertise, or maybe areas that you weren't too knowledgeable in, that you gained experience?
Yeah. First and foremost, 3D printing. Like when I left BlackRock, I think I had this idea. I don't know what I was thinking, but ultimately I just wanted to know about 3D printing, and now it's like I wake up, run printers, go to sleep, printers are running, that's all I do all day. So I would say, if anything, my level of understanding, deep level of understanding of 3D printing has gone from like this, an idea of like most people in the world don't know what 3D printing is really. So kind of like a general idea of what it is, to like I could tell you exact settings for exact materials and everything. So that would be, I think, more so than anything what I've learned the most, because that's what I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
Same way with solar, but also just manufacturing. That's not necessarily NextFab, but I think I got to see that gap between what could you do at NextFab and what do they do at factories in China. And realistically, they're not that much different. In fact, NextFab is much better equipped than your general factory in China. It's just that they know how to use their tools. So I'd say between 3D printing, general manufacturing, and then I think also going back to just the idea of making, just a general idea of how things get made. So now I can't stop it, and I can't stop and look at things and just deconstruct them and say, what did it take to build that, and why did they build it that way? And I think that's just a process of product design. I don't know if anyone's taking like product design classes or anything, but I remember taking a product design class, and for the next 6 months, that's all I did. It was just like, wait, why did they design it like that, or how is it designed? So just an overall worldview of making, and I think that's kind of unique. I think I picked that up definitely along this string.
All right, 2 more quick questions. I'm going to pass this around as a sign-up form if you want to be on our mailing list. You can just put your email address in. Thank you.
I'm Ken Bauer, I'm a local patent agent, and
Nice to meet you.
critical timing here.
Critical
No,
time.
I'm very open-minded when it comes to protection of products, but your product in the long term is going to need some sort of protection, and given the shortcomings of patents, which are certainly there, you need to be looking at what you're going to do as far as your branding.
Yeah. Oh, of course. I was only speaking.
Thoughts along those lines?
Yeah, I was only speaking on the product patent. I don't want to get a utility patent or a design patent at all, but copyright, trademark, of course. Yeah, of course. And that you're right. That's really what we're building here is a brand. So I mean, the technology is one thing, but I didn't invent any of these technologies.
Building a brand takes a lot more than just getting a copyright or getting a trademark.
True. That's why we're not focused on that.
That's some planning that you folks still have to do.
As far as what?
Well, as far as how you're going to brand, what's your follow-on product?
Yeah.
Are you going to form strategic partnerships as far as sales are concerned? You know, who might be allied products that have a similar market base, and so that you can do joint advertising? What catalogs do you want to go into? Do you want to go with Amazon? You've got
That's a really good question.
probably as big a challenge as you already had. You still have coming.
Of course. Oh, it's not going to stop. I'm not expecting it to get any easier anytime soon. My team is mostly business, so those are the things that we like dealing with: branding, strategic, implementation of product and partnerships. And really, I see this product fitting in with the maker movement, and to explain the products and companies involved in that would be a whole different discussion. But yeah, I would say that they're really good questions, but definitely stuff that we've been thinking about.
Okay, one more, or
It's not quick.
all right. Well, you got some privilege here. Go ahead.
I want to save that for something though good though. If I have to call in a favor. Never mind. Okay.
You get two.
So I'm gonna save that. I'm Jessie Pierce. I'm Special Events Coordinator here at the lab. But so I love your idea of like you just like to make stuff, and I'm like that too. And I like to be with people who like to make stuff and just make cool stuff. And if you can give something to someone else and have them make it better, or cheaper, or faster, or whatever, like it makes better stuff, and that's a fun process.
Yeah.
So my question is, thinking about it sort of in that traditional business model of where does leadership and competition fit in with collaboration? You know, have you thought about that? Like when you're in a situation where you need to be in charge, or you do need to throw down like, this is mine, this part is mine. How does that, have you struggled with that ever? You know, do you have an example of something?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely. As kind of like honor, I brought this idea out. It had been built before. Going back to the patent idea, it's like a solar battery charger is nothing new, but what's the way that we're going to do it, and what's that how and what's that why? So I think putting my foot down there was really important in the beginning. But I would say that I try and let go of a lot of that ego-driven kind of attachment to the brand and product. The product and the brand is just as much me as I am it, right? But in order to get people to help me with it, the thing that's helped me more so than anything has been giving them the chance to actually prove themselves to it. I've been reading an interesting book recently called The Starfish and the Spider. It's the idea of decentralization and a spider being a very centralized structure. If you cut a couple legs off, it's going to die, whereas a starfish will regrow or even multiply. And you apply that to an organization, a decentralized organization, and it really hurts you. I'm not saying that we're not a centralized organization from an organization standpoint. We're an LLC, we're organized in Delaware, so it's like we have some sort of centralization, but from a leadership perspective, I like to take a more decentralized view on, which is I try and give the people that work with me autonomy for what they want to build and what they want to see done. And yeah, we bring it together and we talk about it, but I don't, at the end of the day, yes, I'm making decisions on things, but I'm not making decisions on everything. And I think that's been one way that I've actually given myself some sort of relief and some sort of a break, rather than just giving people that chance to add to the business themselves. Like the smallest thing would be like bags, right? Like that wasn't my idea for recycled coffee bag packaging, right? But my partner was like, hey, this would be cool. I talked to this lady, and she's really awesome. She's a startup too, and I think we should use this. I'm like, let's, dude, of course, that's already in it, So I picked up so much extra value from people just putting themselves into it. And from a leadership perspective, I think that is leadership, is kind of bringing everyone together and just getting the best out of people.
All right, thanks so much. That was an awesome presentation.